Hello to you again. Now we'll be including Parse-SDK in the mobile app of our Android Studio project. This is one thing we find to be quite challenging because the official guide documentation for this is written with Java and not very thorough. But first, let's try and use a class from the Parse-SDK library package just to confirm to ourselves that we have actually done something later. So we'll go to main activity and then try to call a class starting parse. So we only have parse exception, parse position, which are from the Java text package. So currently we don't have Parse SDK installed. So let's try and do that and then we'll come back to this later. Let's go to the official documentation, which is this. Also to note is there is this website, which actually I believe is a cloud hosting platform, Back4App. They have actually provided a really good documentation for doing this. They actually also provided a Kotlin code for this, which is very nice. It's not really in the official documentation. It's very helpful. You can, if you get stuck, you can also check this documentation. First, we'll need to add the Gitpack, which is a package repository that hosts Parse SDK. So we'll be downloading the library from there. We'll be adding it to our project level build.gradle. So let's copy this, then look for our project level build.gradle. Not the app version, we'll go to project level. Then we have this build.gradle. Right down here under all projects repositories, and then we'll add this. Then we'll go back here. Then we add the implementation of the Parse SDK inside our module build.gradle file. Gradle is a build automation tool that controls development processes like compiling, linking, and packaging of a project and its modules or applications. You can learn more about it online, but we are going to focus on using it to install Parse SDK onto our project application. So let's get the URL for the latest version of Parse SDK. Open this link here. The latest version would be version 1.26. We have already did this. We have added the package repository. We want to implement it. We want to implement the Parse library. So we want to copy this. And then we'll open the app build.gradle. This one right here. Go to implementations. Right here. Paste it. And then right now it's asking us to, the Gradle files have not been synced. We need to sync it so it can fetch the Parse SDK. Sync now. Notice it is now downloading the Parse SDK version 1.26 and all of its dependencies. Okay, so now let's go back and confirm that we have installed Parse SDK to our project. Now, when we try what we did the other time, the Android Studio IntelliSense is giving us all these options. For example, we have Parse from the com.parse package. We have, for example, Parse object, which is also from the com.parse. That means Parse SDK has been installed successfully. So now let's go to the configuration of it. And then we need to create a class that extends the application class This class, as you can see in the official documentation, is written in Java. So one way to convert this to Kotlin is to copy this and go to try.kotlin.org, go to convert from Java, then paste your Java code here, then convert to Kotlin. And then you'll get this nicely converted Kotlin code, which is really convenient in case you might need it, but that's not what we're going to do. We'll be relying on the Android Studio IntelliSense to make sense of what we want to create our class. So let's go back to Android Studio, go to File, New, want to create a new Kotlin class. Oftentimes the class name is called app, but I prefer we write it in full and call it Parse application and enter. And then this class extends the application. In Kotlin, you don't have to write the keyword extend, you just put column and then application. Override the onCreate function. Then create a config. Store it in a variable called val. Call it config. Then we'll do that with the pass.configuration.builder. Using this context, that means this class, the Parse application class. You want to import it, we'll click Alt and then Enter. So now we are dealing with the configuration builder. As you can see in the return value, we want to set the application ID. The application ID, if you can remember, is clue note. We'll copy it, put it in strings because it's a string. Then we want to set the client key, which is also the master key, which is also a string, which is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then we also want to set the server URL. We'll click .server. Now, one thing to note is we can't use localhost as we have been using before in our web browser to access the Parse server instance, for example, http localhost : because remember, this application is going to be installed inside a virtual device, that means an emulator or a physical Android device. In that case, localhost actually refers to that device itself. The server URL would be an IP address, maybe a private IP address or a public IP address. On live servers, it would be something like, say, server3.cloud.example.1337/pass. But in our case, we are hosting the Parse server instance inside this computer, so we need an IP address of this computer, not the local host. That refers to itself. So we can use the task manager to get the IP address. Remember, this is a dynamic IP address, but we can use it temporarily. You have to consider the routing, even though that is networking, but you actually have to care about how the phone can be able to reach this specific IP address. So they have to be on the same subnet, or maybe if the computer is on the internet, that means it has a public IP address. The phone, which has the client application, has to be able to access this computer, which is hosting the Parse server instance. So in our case, we'll use the IP address, which is for development, not practical, because in real life, you'll be using a domain name like this example, server3.cloud.example.com. But in our case, we'll use 192.168.43.49:1337/pass. And then we'll build this configuration by calling the build method. The build method will turn this Parse configuration builder to a Parse configuration. So now we have a variable called config, which is the config of our Parse application. We can also enable local data store for later if we want to cache objects that are fetched from the Parse server. And then we can run the parse, this method right here, parse.initialize. We want to initialize it with this config that we have just created. Also, as an addition, let's create an access control list, which is the same thing as the default behavior. We'll call the access list just allow. We'll set it to be equal to a parse access control list. Then we'll set the public read access of this access control list to be true. And also set the public write access to be true. So essentially, we are allowing every object created in this Parse client application to have the permission for everyone, that means the public, to read and edit that object, which is not very good, but you can change it to what you want. Usually you will change this to false, but we don't need to do that right now. So I'm just going to leave it as true. So now we set it as the default access control list. So Parse access control list dot set default access control list. We want to set allow. That means the access control list we just created. And then this with access for current user. What that means is the user using this client Parse application that created any object should be able to have read and write access to that specific object. Even if the access control list we are setting as the default right now does not allow the public to read or write on an object created. So we'll set it to true. And now we need to register this class we just created as the initialization class for our application. That means every single time our application is run, it would be the first class that would be called by the Android framework. So we'll go to the manifest inside our app, source, main, and then Android manifest. We'll open it. And inside this application tag, we'll create a name attribute, and then we'll say .parse application. Okay. I believe we are using HTTP, so we'll add this uses clear text traffic true. Of course, in live servers, you'd be using HTTPS, but right now in our development server, we are using HTTP, so we'll need to add this attribute as well. Okay, now let's do the not so provided part of this setup. Let's move these parameters, the application ID, the client key, and the server to strings. That way we can reference them from anywhere within our app. To do that, we'll go to resources. Then we'll create values for them. App ID, copy it, go to strings, create a new string, create an app ID, paste it here, create another string, copy it. This is same as the master key. the back end. So we'll just do a comment to notify that. And then add the server URL. This should be http:// Then right now, instead of hard coding this, we can just reference it from the strings resource file r dot. And then let's add a couple of metadata tags inside our Android manifest XML file. This is to share the connection parameters with parent component for push notification. We're just setting this up in case we decide to add more features to our app later, just to make everything a bit complete. So let's recheck. And I think we're done. We'll test this later. We'll try to connect to our Parse server in our next session. Thank you very much.